Welcome back to Get Down to Business, the show all about small business, jobs, and entrepreneurship. So we certainly have seen a lot happen over these past few months when we're talking about government. We've been seeing elections taking place. But I got to say that government is not known for operational excellence. And, elections can take place. But the reality is that sweeping change and government operating like a business, not very, very common that is something that we talk about. I'm thrilled to be joined by Dean Schroeder, who is an award-winning author, consultant, and academic. Dr. Schroeder has worked with organizations worldwide, led radical transformations for 4 companies, served on 4 corporate boards, and was on the board of examiners for the Malcolm Beldridge National Quality Award for 6 years. He's the best-selling co-author of Ideas Are Free, the idea-driven organization and practical innovation in government, how frontline leaders are transforming public sector organizations. Dr. Schroeder, Dean, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Shalom. It's great to be here.
Absolutely a pleasure to have you. So you are touching on a really important conversation at a really, really important time. End of the year as we're moving into a new year. We just finally wrapped up these crazy political ads. What got you interested in making government more efficient?
Well, actually, we were drawn in sort of sideways. We launched our last book about 8 years ago, and we're getting calls from public sector managers, government managers. Now, we've worked with managers at public sector before, but we could never get the productivity kicks from our work that we wanted. And so we decided to see if there was something about government when it came to continuous improvement and ideas and this sort of thing. What was different about government that made it more difficult? So we started out looking. And academics start out in the research, couldn't find anything, then started looking, said, hey, there might be an article, and grew from there into a book.
Wow, amazing. So in the book, again, which we are going to plug several more times, Practical Innovation in Government, how frontline leaders are transforming public sector organizations, just came out a couple of months ago. You write that some of the high-performing government units you looked at rival the best in the private sector. That seems surprising. What's going on?
It is surprising, and we were surprised, but what we found is, one of the challenges in government is all the bureaucracy, the checks and balances, the divided authority, all of which serve a function, but it makes change very difficult. As a matter of fact, rapid improvement events, which in industry might take a couple of weeks, we're taking up to 18 months in government. And so we're looking at this, pulling our hair out and saying, hey, this doesn't make sense. But where we found the secret was on the front lines, where we had frontline leaders, department heads, listening to their frontline people, making a lot of small ideas that flew under the bureaucratic radar. And by golly, these guys were sometimes producing productivity increases of a couple of 100% over 18 months.
Wow, fascinating, absolutely fascinating. So again, I'm chatting with Dr. Dean Schroeder, and it's a fascinating read, and I've just gotten started. But what would you say are the major ahas of your book?
Well, there are a couple of major ahas. The first one is that if you want big change, think small. Think small, think little ideas. A lot of times we think, we want change big, government needs to transform, yada, yada. We can't think small. Well, the opposite is actually true, because small ideas can be implemented quickly, easily, and have a surprising impact. We were finding a small idea like changing a manual so people didn't interrupt service technicians would all of a sudden save 5 minutes an interruption, but that was happening 36 times a day. And you do the math, and what that is that's $100K over 3 years. That's big savings. That's a big improvement. So little ideas are much more important than we think.
Okay, absolutely. And so, I was just actually listening to some podcasts earlier where they were talking about Tesla, SpaceX, all those sort of things, and a lot of conversation about how government should look at business and the private sector. But it's interesting, Dean, you have a unique perspective. When you look at the best managed government organizations, are they doing anything that the private sector can learn from?
Absolutely. That was the thing that kind of surprised us. We've been studying improvement in industry for about 30 years now. And what we found was what business was doing, a couple of things that government was doing, that business can benefit from. One is that frontline perspective on small ideas. That we tend to focus on the big stuff. Second is the frontline folks have a perspective of practical application that the people at the top of our organization are oftentimes missing. So even on those bigger projects, and we do need bigger projects, include that frontline wisdom. Pull a couple of frontliners in there, and it'll save you a lot when it comes to implementation and making bad moves. The last thing is every organization needs multiple means for improvement. Things quick and easy on the front line, things in the middle that are process oriented, that getting the right people in the room with a handful of resources and a little bit of time can solve. Two large changes which are more like campaigns and involve a lot of complexity and other changes. But you really need to be operating at improving at all levels.
Definitely. Absolutely. Again, I'm chatting with Dean Schroeder, award-winning author, consultant, and academic. He's the co-author of this fantastic read, Practical Innovation in Government, How Frontline Leaders Are Transforming Public Sector Organizations. And as we start to come to the conclusion of our conversation, I'm really sort of reflecting on over the past century, there have been lots of attempts to improve government efficiency. Everybody thinks that they could do it. A number at the national level, but none of them seem to have had a real impact. Why would you say that is?
Well, it is very difficult to change large-scale things that are heavily entrenched. And so while if you're dealing with something like a policy change and implementing it, that is very possible to do. But if you think of all the little things at the front lines that are needed to make that change effective and make it really work, that's the key. And usually that's lacking.
Absolutely. Very, very interesting. No, I appreciate that perspective. I know we're talking to the subject matter expert over here. And just finally, I know that you've seen some, as you've been implying over the past few minutes of our conversation, some really, really good examples of government being more efficient and innovating in many, many major ways. Any examples that you could share with our listeners?
Any examples?
Yeah, please.
Oh, one of my favorites is the Washington State Patrol Garage. They're the ones converting regular vehicles into police vehicles. And like many governments, Washington ran into trouble, so they decided to save some money. So what they did is they stopped buying vehicles for a couple of years and fell way behind. High mileage vehicles, lots of problems with them because they didn't buy any for a couple of years. Then what happened is they bought a whole bunch of vehicles and they sat out in the lot because they couldn't convert them fast enough. Well, the frontline guys got together with some lean training by Boeing, of all people, a private sector company, were trained, and within 18 months, they had tripled their production and solved a lot of problems in the meantime. And they're continuing to learn. It's fun to go out there and watch those guys.
Well, these are some great stories, some great examples that we should reflect on as we move into the new year and think aspirationally of the change that can happen. And it's all detailed in Practical Innovation in Government, How Frontline Leaders Are Transforming Public Sector Organizations. It's not just what should happen, but it's actually some really, really practical examples of what is happening already. Dean, I've enjoyed our conversation. I know our listeners will want to get in touch with you and, of course, pick up a copy of the book. How can they do that?
Well, best way is dmschroeder.com, my website, and you can get a hold of me through that.
Fantastic. dmschroeder.com. You can pick up a copy of the book as well as your prior book. I know Ideas Are Free, the Idea-Driven Organization. And Dean, I know you've got a lot of other great information out there, and who knows, maybe another book coming soon as well. Again, you're listening to Get Down to Business, the show all about small business, jobs, and entrepreneurship. We're going to squeeze in a quick break, but one thing that I have to say is this time of year is a time to be thankful, and I'm especially thankful for everybody that's joined us over the past year in listening to our shows, but also specifically those that have subscribed, rated, reviewed, and shared, because that makes it even easier for other people to find this program. So if you haven't yet done so, get on your favorite podcast app, subscribe, rate, review, and share. makes it easier for others to find out about the show, all about small business, jobs, and entrepreneurship. And speaking of which, get on my website, shalomklein.com, so you don't miss a single episode. You'll be notified and alerted when a new episode drops on your favorite podcast application. So again, get on my website, shalomklein.com. Some headlines, commercials. When we come back, we've got more small business, jobs, and entrepreneurship. Don't touch that dial.